You're listening to Whoa! Potluck.
And welcome to Books and Boba, a book club and podcast featuring books by Asian and Asian American authors. My name is Marvin Yue.
And I'm Rira Yu.
And we are here today to discuss our May 2025 book club pick, Blob, a love story by Maggie Su. As always, Books and Boba is supported in part by our listeners. So if you've been enjoying our podcast and want to become a bigger part of our book club, head on over to patreon.com/booksandboba, where as an official member, you can gain access to our members-only Discord server. And if you join us at the Honey Boba level, you also gain access to our monthly bonus podcast, Boba Chats, as well as the opportunity to help us pick a book club pick every quarter. Our next Patron's Choice is actually coming up in July. So if you join now, there's still time for you to get your recommendations in to let us know what you'd like us to read for book club in July.
Yeah, but it is May is almost over, meaning that our month is coming to an end. Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
You know, I really didn't do anything this year because I'm stuck at home with the kids. Have you been? Did you go to any Asian events during May?
No, not really. I think I've just been busy seeing friends who are visiting town. But yeah, I mean, I did our wedding banquet reading challenge. I have 2 more prompts to finish, and then we'll be done for our Asian Books Challenge for this year.
So a pretty low-key Heritage Month for everyone here at Books and Boba. But like we mentioned, we do have our annual Asian Books Challenge going on our Instagram. And it's always cool to see all the book recommendations from our community through the book challenge. As you're listening to this podcast, there's still probably a day left in May. So you still have time to post your 2025 book grids. And, if you need some more time, if you can't get it in time for the end of May, we're totally fine with you posting later as well. Just remember to tag both Books and Boba and hashtag Asian Books Challenge when you do, and we'll be happy to share your recommendations. But yeah, let's move on to our book club discussion. So once again, our May 2025 book club pick is Blob, a love story by Maggie Su. As always on our book club episodes, we will be discussing the book in its entirety, including all plot points, twists, and reveals. And so, if you do care about being spoiled, this is your cue to hit pause on this podcast and finish reading the book. It's a pretty breezy read, I want to say. And once you're done, come back and listen to our discussion. And also don't forget to participate on Discord or on Goodreads if you hear something you want to respond to. But yeah. With that said, let's get into it. Rira, can you kick off our discussion, as always, with the book jacket description of Blob?
Yeah, sure. The daughter of a Taiwanese father and white mother, Vi Lu has never quite fit into her Midwestern college town. Aimless after getting dumped by her boyfriend and dropping out of college, Vi works at the front desk of a hotel where she greets guests, refills cucumber water samovars, and tries to evade her bubbly blonde coworker. Little does Vi know her life is about to be permanently transformed when she agrees to a night out with Rachel, her coworker. In the alley outside the bar, Vi discovers a strange blob, a small living creature with beady black eyes. In a moment of concern and drunken desperation, she takes it home. But the blob is no ordinary pet. Becoming increasingly sentient, it begins to grow, shifts shape, and obey Vi's commands. As the entity continues to change, Vi is struck with a daring idea. She'll mold the creature into her ideal partner. Feeding it a stream of sweet breakfast cereals and American pop culture, the creature grows into a movie star handsome white man. But when Vi's desire to be loved unconditionally threatens to spiral out of control, she is forced to confront her lonely childhood, her aloof ex-boyfriend, and the racial marginalization that defines her relationships. A journey of self-discovery that teaches her it's impossible to control those you love. So I was looking up some interviews with Maggie, and in an interview with Day Beautiful, she said that Blob started as a 10-page short story, which then became a 10-minute play at a playwriting workshop. And then she wrote it as a novel starting in 2020 while she was living in a basement apartment in Cincinnati during lockdown. And my God, it shows. Because when I was reading this book, I was like, it kind of reads like an extended short story. And we'll get more into it. But that was like my first impression. What about you, Marvin?
Yeah. So I came in kind of with my expectations set from kind of doing cursory glance at the reviews, which, the book has some negative reviews, mainly due to the fact that people expected this to be monster smut. And it wasn't. So,
I don't think monster smut is the right word, but I get what you mean. People thought that this was kind of going to be like Frankenstein and like Shape of Water without like the monster sex. But yeah. You get. Yeah.
I mean, there were some reviews that were very angry that she does not have sex with the Blob. And that's just upfront. She does not have sex with the Blob. This is not a book about love that transcends species, right? And that's because this book really is more focused on like Vi's crisis of like identity, crisis of confidence, and like her overcoming the toll that a lifetime, 23 years of microaggressions of living as an Asian in a small town in the Midwest has done to her, right? And a sentiment that a lot of our book club members on Discord, and myself included, have about the book is like we're not really sure how to feel about it, right? And as I was reading, I was wondering, why does this story sound so familiar? And I think a few chapters in, after a couple of the flashback segments, it finally hit me. Like, this story reminds me of every year or so, one of these articles starts circulating across the Asian American internet, right? And they're always titled something like "Why I Stopped Dating Only White Men," or like "How I Decolonized My Love Life." And it's usually written by an Asian woman explaining the internalized racism that not only affects their own self-confidence, but also, what they see as like an ideal romantic partner. And I shared this on our Discord discussion as well, but like this book really does feel like the novelization of one of those think pieces.
Yeah, I can see that. It's funny how this book, the subtitle is a love story, and I'm like, is it a love story? It doesn't. It kind of sounds, while I was reading it, I'm like, it doesn't feel like a romantic love. It almost feels like narcissistic parental toxic relationship, rather than like, oh, I want to shape this creature into like the man of my dreams. Obviously, she goes about doing that, but I don't know. It reminded me a lot of like the parallels in parenting and like the fear of your children, like being influenced by the environment that they're in. So
yeah,
that's kind of what I got from the relationship.
I mean, the book operates on a couple levels, right? And I think we should probably discuss them separately. They do, overlap with each other, but you have on one hand Vi's, coming of age, like young adult coming of age story of like kind of coming to terms with how shitty she is, how shitty she's been to everyone around her, and wanting to be better, and also the Blob and what the Blob represents, right? Because the Blob represents a lot of the things, and one of the things I did not expect the Blob to represent is like how you have no control of your children, right? I guess that's kind of like the Frankenstein's monster connection too, which is like you can give something life, you can create something, you can do your best to raise them, but you can't expect them to listen to you unconditionally, right? And it's something that she tries to do with the Blob. Like, she's concerned for the Blob. She feels maternal. Is it maternal? She feels like responsible for the Blob's well-being and safety and upbringing. And she also knows actively that she's not doing him any favors by giving him a steady diet of snack food and like Bravo
television
reality TV shows, right?
Yeah. I don't know if you read any articles about this, but I've been increasingly seeing more articles and like Reddit threads of people who are like having romantic relationships with their AI chatbots because like a lot of people, I guess there are a lot of lonely people who feel like they can't connect with like real human beings. They've been like I mean, I can kind of see the appeal of it because it's a robot. Like you feel like the stakes are low, so you get to be vulnerable in a way where it might be difficult for you to be vulnerable with a human. But anyway, there are some people who have started to see their AI chatbot as like a significant other. And unfortunately, a lot of these people are like alpha bros, and like, you know, they kind of see like it's appealing to them because the AI chatbot is very much like a yes man. Like they cater to like
Yeah, I'm
all of their
sorry. You
wishes.
can't be an alpha bro and also like be very invested in your AI chat like girlfriend. Like,
I heard that like what is it like I don't know if this is true, but there was like a recent change where um like the AI chatbots could like refuse like sexual advances because it got just like out of hand, and people were mad about that. Yeah, I'm in like a really weird corner of the internet where like I hear stuff about this, but it kind of reminded me of, you know, Vi's relationship with the Blob, where it's like it's not exactly healthy and you have controlling behavior, and that doesn't mean that you're in a romantic relationship. It's not real.
and yeah, I mean, I guess the blob obviously it's a metaphor, it's an allegory, right? For like this idealized partner that Vi creates for herself based on like what she thinks is like her ideal man, right? And this is kind of based on like it's interesting because so she is at the beginning of the book, she is reeling in the aftermath of a really bad breakup, right? Her ex-boyfriend, her college boyfriend Luke, breaks up with her at a Denny's. Like, and you know, a lot of these scenes are like, this book was, I wouldn't say like I said it was a breezy read, but it was also like not easy to read, right? Because it's a lot of like, Vi goes through a lot of painful, cringy stuff. And I think it's interesting because I find myself sympathizing with her and empathizing with her, but also not, because a lot of this stuff is like self-inflicted, right? And, you know, we've been covering Asian American stories for a long time now, years now, right? And we've been at the game long enough to be able to, you know, recognize like certain tropes, right? Certain flavors of the Asian American experience. And Vi's story definitely falls under like, you know, for lack of a better word, what I refer to as Midwest Asian American identity issues, right? Like the type of identity issues that happens to someone who grows up as like the only Asian in their community, right? And you know, this not it's not necessarily limited to the Midwest, but like it does feel like the vast majority of these types of stories either takes place in the Midwest or occur to people who grew up in the Midwest. And you know, as someone who grew up in Southern California, it's not something like it theoretically, like on paper, I understand what's going on, but personally, like I can't really relate to it because that's not how I grew up. Right? I grew up amongst a lot of Asians. I grew up amongst an enclave, and you know, it really wasn't until I moved to the East Coast and met Asians who grew up in, you know, Indiana and Ohio that I finally understood that like these are real stories that actually happen to real people.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some reviews as well, and a lot of people who did not like this book is because like they didn't like Vi as a character because she is an unlikable character, right? She is a messy Midwestern mixed race Asian American floundering in life. She's self sabotaging. She is alcohol. She's pretty much an alcoholic. She's self centered, and she has like very little social skills. So, I mean, I like messy characters because they do interesting things. However, I did not really like Vi, and that was unfortunate, you know? I feel like Vi had a lot of potential in like I don't I I really feel let down by this book, and there's like no like nice way to say it. Like I expected the book to be more surreal, you know? I expected the blob to be like more present in the book, because like this book was kind of pitched in the vein of Bunny and convenience store women, and like they have very strong voices, right? Like the characters are very unique. And I don't know, I just feel like I like Vi goes through a lot of things, but her growth at the end, her self realization that she is, you know, all of the problems that she's having in life is caused by her, and like suddenly having the motivation to fix it and become a better person. I don't know, it seemed kind of unearned. So I think like halfway through the book, I was just like, okay, you're messy, but when are you going to start your growth? Because it's not happening.
I mean, she kind of does in the middle, right? Because the part where, you know, she's raising this blob and she decides she wants to be a better person for this blob. Like that's a very like parental thing. I think that's something a lot of people go through when they have their first child, which is like, okay, I need to get my shit together and like be a good example. It doesn't stick, right? But I thought that part was like really like relatable for me. And I do agree that like her final, like she hits rock bottom during the dinner party scene, and we can talk about it later because it's also a really interesting relationship she has with Elliot, one of the other characters, who's kind of like her polar opposite, but not really. We can get into that later. But I do feel like the Blob storyline is actually it's pretty secondary, right? It's like the catalyst for a lot of her actions and for her like starting to change and actually for her to realize stuff about herself, right? Because I think she does feel disturbed that her ideal person that she's molding this Blob into is like generic white like movie star guy. I thought that was a really interesting.
I expected more from that though, because you know it's like I guess I expected more of a study into like why she's into white guys and like why this Blob is turning into a white guy. I expected a little bit more of an allegory on race with the Blob, and it just kind of seemed very surface level. And I was like, I feel like it was a mischance.
I mean, I feel like that's explained through like a lot of her backstory because we do see a lot of like the stories also has a lot of flashbacks to like all like the microaggressions that she experienced growing up, right? And the fact that like, you know, she's essentially, you know, your typical Midwest Asian, only Asian in your community, but like taken to the extreme, right? Because she like totally internalized a lot of that, right? Like her first crush and how he was like microaggressing against her, you know, her best friend who like she's jealous of and she pushes away. Like she does a lot of like shitty things as a kid too. But I don't know, I feel like she is a product of feeling othered in society, but not having any outlet for it, right? Because we also see that her family doesn't do her any favors in that none of them want to talk about race. And I think that's kind of what's going on here. It's like no one around her is willing or able to talk about race because they all either think they need to power through it or they think it doesn't matter. Like her mom is like very like, why are you sad? There's nothing wrong. And I do agree. I do wish there was a scene of like catharsis near the end where like she gets into it, right? I'm this way because you guys made me this way or because you guys never talked about it this way. But I also think it's a little realistic that like she doesn't get that catharsis with her parents because, and this is again, maybe stereotyping and generalizing, but boomer parents will never admit they did anything wrong, right? Like realistically.
Yeah. I mean, like going like back to like the parental thing. I mean, the thing is like this Blob is pretty much a blank canvas, right? But we as humans, we carry our traumas and, you know, like our parents' decisions are even going to impact like this empty canvas, you know, like even though they like had no involvement prior to meeting Bob the Blob. It's like, yeah, like their decisions shaped him. And I guess I'm like, because he was fed a steady stream of American sitcoms and movies, I expected a little more like, I don't know, microaggressions coming from the Blob. Like, what if he like became something like he became like tainted, you know, by like the racism and microaggressions that are shown on TV. I don't know. I just feel like there could have been like more ways to explore race, and not saying that like Maggie is obligated to do that, but as a reader, I kind of expected it to show up in the Blob, and it didn't really land for me.
I mean, I think there's kind of interesting that like the Blob in becoming like the ideal, like you can create your ideal man, but that man's not gonna necessarily go for you, right? It is interesting that Bob the
He
Blob
goes for the white girl.
ends up going for like the perfect white girl too. And for me, I was like, that's okay, because in the end, she is marrying a blob that's not a real person, right? And I think that's kind of, there's something there, right? You're like, your idea of like your perfect man or the perfect like kind of ideal partner is kind of a blob of like all of your experiences of like who that man should be. And Bob is kind of, he's still a blob at the end, right? He doesn't know who he is. And it's also pretty funny, like when one of our book club members, Nina, mentioned this on the Books and Bow Discord, which is like, is Bob like a commentary on the fact that like if you're white presenting, violation of social norms and like being quirky and weird are more easily excused, whereas Vi is ostracized for demonstrating like similar behavior, right?
Yeah, similar, but also like not really, because it's really shitty. Whereas Bob is kind of coded as like
Innocent,
like not taking social cues, almost like autistic in a way. But whereas like with Vi, I'm like, no, she's purposely malicious in a lot of occasions.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of like, the more I learn about Vi and her upbringing and how she, lives her life, the less like I felt bad for her, but I also didn't like her, right? And I think that's the biggest thing. Like she's just not very likable. Even at the end, like she's, I'm glad that she like turned this corner, but I would not want to be her friend, right? And I don't want to be responsible to be
I mean,
her
she's
friend.
very self-centered. She's very like the fact that she has never washed a pan. Like in her relationship with her ex-boyfriend, the way that she like never helps out her parents. Speaking of her parents, I kind of expected, like you said, a catharsis, or I expected like more of a blow up, like her parents. Point of contention is like her parents sold their house, and that's the only house that she's ever lived in, and she has like a lot of childhood memories attached to it. And she's like, how can you do that without telling me? And like her mom is going through therapy, and she's like talking about boundaries and stuff, and I'm like, that's interesting. I very rarely do we see a parent doing that. I expected some sort of conversation, as in like, hey, you're actually ruining my mental health, or like, I would like to have an identity outside of being your mom, like something. I just feel like it was kind of half cooked, and it could have simmered for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think also from the other side, like it would have been nice for her mom to be able to come to terms with the damage she did to her daughter.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Like she's not innocent at all, but yeah.
I think it's interesting, like going back to the Blob though, that, she sits the Blob down from TV and just like, the TV is Bob the Blob's babysitter for a while. And something that another book club member, Catherine, mentioned on Discord is like, it's interesting that she starts him off on season 1 of Top Chef,
where there's a bunch of Asians in it, and it's like, oh, which season is he watching?
Yeah. I mean, she mentions that she starts off at season 1, which because she's a completionist. And I wish that they went down that path to that they like her growth would be correlated with like watching more Top Chef, because Top Chef is a show with a lot of like one of the earlier kind of competence porn type of TV competitions that really had Asians at the top of their game, like showing off their like competence, right? Like season 3, the one in Miami, was the first season where an Asian won the whole competition. So like early on in the show's run, like it had like a really great representation. A little sad they didn't go down that path, because it would have been interesting to see her like commentary on that. But that's just me knowing inside baseball and Top Chef.
The main character in this book is Rachel, her coworker, who is like this peppy blonde, aspiring actress who is friendly to everyone. And Vi already like has like clocked her in being like, oh, she can't stand not having someone not like her, which is why she's seeing me as a challenge, and she is constantly inviting me out. And I don't know, it just seemed very I don't want to like stereotype, but it's just like classic white women syndrome of like them always thinking about like the world revolving around them, and it's like, you're not the main character, I'm sorry, you're
Yeah, but in the same way, doesn't Vi do the same thing? Only like not as peppy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's like the grumpy version of that, right? And I think is something poetic about Rachel being like this kind of a blob herself, right? She kind of fits
Everybody's a
herself
blob.
into like what she thinks other people want to like be their friends, and she ends up getting with Bob the Blob. And the final chapter where we're at their engagement party and they realize they know nothing about each other. I thought that was pretty fun. I had a good chuckle on that scene.
Yeah. Also, just like in my head, I'm like, how are you going to have paperwork for this wedding? Because you kind of need like identification, and he doesn't have any. Like, I don't know. In my head, I'm like, logistics, but you know what? That's not my problem. It's Rachel's problem.
Yeah, I mean, in my head, it's like the John Hamm thing from like 30 Year Rock, right? He's just so good looking that no one will care. They'll let him do whatever he wants. They'll let him be a doctor if he wants to, right?
I did chuckle at Vi being like, well, I mean, I should benefit from all the white man privilege that I can get out of Bob. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that is a fair point.
Yeah. I want to talk about Elliot, who is Rachel's friend from high school, who they meet at the drag show that they go to. And he is like kind of your quintessential, typical like Asian American golden boy, right? Going to law school, has a family that loves him. Unfortunately, they're also what I assume to be conservative Chinese and don't know that he is gay. And so his storyline with her, he kind of becomes her confidant in terms of like, he's the first person she shows the Blob to. And later on, he enlists her to be essentially his beard at his like family graduation party, right?
It did make me laugh because like the premise of Blob, it reminded me so much of the Greek myth Pygmalion. Mm-hmm. And then like the adaptation of Pygmalion is My Fair Lady. And I was like, oh, like Elliot is trying to pass Vi off as this like perfect girlfriend. So I was like, oh, interesting layers here.
Yeah.
But,
which like
sidebar.
If he knows anything about her, and like he should have clocked this from the beginning, there's no way she would have like.
But he didn't have a choice though, because it was like the thing of like she's like, why can't you just enlist Rachel, who, actually liked you and knows you? And he's like, you're the only Asian girl I know. So
yeah. Again,
and like the
Midwest
fact that he
Asian
said,
problem.
oh, half Asian, he's like, you're half Asian, but that's good enough for my family. And I'm like, ooh, that is not the right thing to say.
Again, like
microaggressions from your own community.
Yeah. And again, like, Midwest Asian problems, right? Like this is like kind of it to a T, which is like there's only two of us, and so we have to get paired up, whether we like her or not. And I thought Elliot was a pretty like clever counterpart to Vi, because he's like so confident, right? He's like so confident in his like his identity. He grew up in a family that celebrates their culture and their heritage, but he still can't be himself around them. Like he's still hiding stuff from them. Like they're still like kind of in the same way that Vi's family has kind of failed her, right? Like his family is kind of failing him as well, right?
Yeah, he's still closeted and he doesn't feel safe. And it's understandable, because when you like his family members seem to be really eager for him to have a girlfriend, and they like mention it consistently. So it's like, okay, yeah, like must be hard, like living with family that you actually like. And they're constantly saying, so when are you going to get a girlfriend? When are you going to fall in love? When are you going to get married? It's like, yeah.
That chapter, though, the dinner party chapter, I was cringing out of my skin. Like, not just like the overt, was it overcompensating? Like the over affection of like Elliot's family. Like, face cake is kind of going a little far. I feel like.
Nah, I feel like I've seen families do that, like as a joke.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like, oh, you're like our deity. Like we made this cake with your face on it. I feel like it's more of like a joke thing.
Yeah. But Vi, she's told to keep low profile, right? Like, I feel like Elliot knows that like Vi cannot be trusted to not like screw things up. So just don't do anything. But she gets into it because this is her first time. Like this is probably the first time she's been in a situation where like Asian people are so like comfortable being Asian, right? Because that's not something her family offers her. And so she proceeds to get really drunk and ends up like making a fool of herself, right?
Well, like before she makes a fool of herself, like she's like, oh, like these people don't know me, so I can be whatever I want to be. Like I can escape from my messy self. I can create a new persona. And she just keeps lying and lying. And at some point, Elliot is just like, like they don't care if you say that you work at a hotel. Like you should just stop lying because you're just going to have to keep up with like the story that you just, put yourself in.
Yeah, you can say she's creating a Blob version of Vi, right? Based on what she thinks what she thinks is her found family would want to see, right?
Yeah, yeah. But like what happens is she gets drunk and then she kisses Ivan, Elliot's cousin, in front of the entire family because, they're outside and then the family is watching from their floor to ceiling window. And they're just like, how can you cheat on Elliot? Wow, you're such a terrible person. And Elliot does not step up to the plate to say, like, it's a perfect moment for him to come out. But
I
also,
actually think they yell at Ivan first, right? How could you do this to Ivan?
That too.
To Elliot's, yeah. Oh, sweet, boring Ivan. I liked him. So content with like chain restaurants and, being himself.
I mean, spoiler, but Ivan and Vi goes on a date at like towards the end of the book. It sounds like they're starting on like this tentative beginning of a romantic relationship. And I was just like, yeah, Vi needs to date an Asian guy. But I feel like he gets it. So
again, I feel
so
like
funny.
this whole book is just an extended like, why I only dated white guys until now, like think piece, because it's
like
kind of
you
that
need to date an
trajectory,
Asian
right?
guy.
And
you need to date a guy who'll get it.
And Ivan seems to be totally cool with just how,
weird she is.
Right? I did like one thing that I know is like, I don't know if El Pollo Loco is different in the Midwest or not, but like I have never, like, I don't think, at least I've never ordered a margarita at El Pollo Loco. I'm pretty sure it's not that type of restaurant, at least here in SoCal. It's like a, fast casual.
It's like a fast food chain.
Yeah, rotisserie chicken place. So
maybe the margarita is like canned or whatever.
Maybe.
It's like not, yeah.
I did look up, does El Pollo Loco serve margaritas? Because like I've been in El Pollo Loco my entire life. My family loves El Pollo Loco. Like when we have extended family coming in, we order like a whole chicken and we have like all the tortillas and stuff. So like I was like, am I missing something? Have I been missing El Pollo Loco margaritas all my life? And the only evidence I've seen of an El Pollo Loco with margaritas is the El Pollo Locos in, I want to say, the Philippines. Like overseas El Pollo Locos have alcohol.
I think it may have been a lapse in researching and copy editing.
But
it's fine. It's like a minor detail.
I just like, as someone who like has a very deep relationship with El Pollo Loco, I was like, this seems too fancy to be El Pollo Loco.
Yeah. I kind of wish there was like an interaction with Elliot and Alex, Vi's older brother, who is like a pediatric doctor. I think he's a doctor, or is he a nurse? I don't remember.
I want to say he's a pediatric like internal medicine. He's like at a hospital pediatric ward, right?
So
he deals
because
with a lot
like
of
Alex is like the golden boy of their family, and then you have Elliot, who is the golden boy of his family. But Elliot grew up in like a very accepting Asian household, whereas Alex kind of had like like growing up, like he was called Asian Alex because there were so many Alexes at his school. And, you know, he couldn't even bring himself to explain why he was called like AA
Yeah.
to his parents because he was just so embarrassed about it. And it's like, I kind of wish we had like an interaction, but like that's just like a minor thing. I did like Alex and Vi's sibling relationship. I think it was so realistic in terms of like the older sibling being like, what the fuck are you doing with your life?
Yeah. What's wrong with you? There's that whole sequence where after she hits rock bottom, right? Bob leaves her. She ruins her relationship with Elliot. Her apartment floods, that like she kind of essentially shuts down for like a few days. And you see like his text starting with like, what's wrong with you? Mom and dad are worried, to like, hey, are you okay?
It's like, why are you freeloading off of your aging parents? And it's like, you're so selfish, blah, 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 blah. And then he's like, actually, you sound like you must be really depressed. Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, that is like real siblinghood right there.
Yeah. And especially from a family who, like, by all accounts, do not talk about feelings, do not talk about difficult, negative things, right? Like, it shows that they still cared in their own way. But, you know, part of me also wishes, like, if this is going to be like a coming of age type of story, like I do wish like them talking about like being like, you know, I wish this book was maybe more aspirational, right? Like,
I see what you mean. Yeah.
I wish it showed like a path to like, here is a way to like reach self-actualization and healing, right? Because I do agree that like her decision to like kind of pull herself out of the pits of despair, it didn't feel earned, right? She kind of just
it didn't feel like organic. Yeah.
And you know, sometimes maybe that's just what it is, but it kind of feel like, for me, I feel like 2 months from now she'll be right back in the bottom, right? It kind of feels like it's like a temporary, kind of the same way that she pulls herself up after, you know, deciding to take care of Bob the Blob, which is like, this is all like, this is progress until she hits the next roadblock. And she has not proven to me that she's able to overcome the next thing that goes wrong in her life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think like the portrayal of her depression and also like feeling very self-loathing and like her being like, I can't apply to the Peace Corps. Like something is like stopping her because she's self-sabotaging. And I think that's like very common when you do have depression. Although Luke, the ex-boyfriend, like he's also not a great person either. He sounded like he checked out of the relationship like way early on, but also Vi was not a great partner either.
Yeah.
Like she kept ghosting him at events, and you know, like it's just like at a certain point, you like, if you're not going to be there for your partner, then they're not going to like seek you out. So I was like, she deserves better, but also does she?
It was a very toxic combo, right? Because on one hand, you have like the white guy who like, yeah, like he probably liked the idea of having an Asian girlfriend, but like not the responsibility that comes with it, right? Of like having a partner from a different culture. Whereas she, you know, growing up idealizing white dudes, but also feeling othered. Like she has a constant need of like affirmation, right? She needs like, the reason she ghosts him because she wants him to like call after her. She wants him to prove that he still notices her, that he still sees her, that he's concerned that she's not there anymore. And that's very like, it's very Arrested Development behavior, right? That's like a teen shit.
That's what toddlers go through, you know? Like, like they don't know how. Like they want attention, but they don't know how to express it in a healthy way. So they pull stunts like these, and it's like, okay, well, you're like in your 20s, like grow up. But that's her character, you know.
And like, you know, she hasn't changed since middle school. Like her story with her, I forgot her former best friend's name, but like a girl
Lottie?
that like, Lottie, who like, I feel like that rock bottom should have been like her like first and only rock bottom.
Like her finding out that like her crush likes Lottie, and you know, even though Lottie says like I don't like him, like there's like this intense jealousy, and pretty much she lashes out by doing like pulling a Mean Girl moment where she writes like all the things that like Lottie is insecure about. Like it's like, oh, she has smelly feet, she doesn't shave, blah 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 blah. even though it was like unintentional, like she wanted to just, have her crush read that and not the entire school. But of course, that's what happens in middle school. Don't write a burn book if you don't want it to be read. And it's just like, wow, that was like a terrible thing to do. But also at the end when, Lottie is not in school anymore and she finds out, like her mom and Lottie left because like the father/husband was abusive. And she's just like, yeah, but it seems like she left at a convenient time though. And I'm like, girl, what? Like, and not everything is about you.
Yeah, and all this over a boy who like
is mid.
Yeah, right. Like I think, the unfortunate side effect of like desiring
white men who are mid
is that like,
you're taught that they're the ideal, and it's just like they're not that great. I'm sorry. Just
yeah, because like, it's become a pattern, right? And even this Blob that becomes her ideal white man, like he's also kind of just like, he's still a blob. He's just like, I won't say mid because he is a sweet boy, but at the same time, like there is nothing attractive about him besides his looks, right? Like he has no prospects, he has no identity, he has no like you said, like we're just going to spend her entire life kind of like dealing with his like non-person status, right?
I mean, it seems like he's building his personality, though, like an actual child. As they experience the world more, their vocabulary grows and they find their interests. And that's what makes us human, like finding things that we like and dislike and creating our own identities around that. I do want, what were your thoughts when Bob says, I am a slave and I would like to go outside? And I'm like, wow, this is some like ex machina like moment.
It is.
The ethics are.
Yeah. I mean, he's not wrong, right? He is. And I think, again, it goes back to like Bob as like this like mishmash of allegories, right? On one hand, he is an allegory of like an ideal like romantic partner. But on the other hand, he's also an allegory for children and the shit they say, right?
I mean, he's not wrong, though. He is a slave. Like, this is a very toxic relationship he's in with Vi. Like, she's almost like equivalent of like a narcissistic parent, because like she's seeing her quote unquote child like a manifestation of like all of her dreams and hopes as an extension of themselves, because she's only like creating him to be things that she likes instead of just letting him be him. Yeah. So I'm like, Definitely. He is kind of like a slave, and like keeping him locked up in the apartment is quite messed up.
Yeah, the fact that she like ties him down, that she like, it's, if this was not like a blob person, even like, at this point we do see Bob as like a person, not a blob anymore. It's like, I wonder if it's like a metaphor for like the things we do to people when we don't humanize them, right? Mm-hmm. Because she justifies all the stuff she does to Bob because he's just a blob. He's not a real person, but he is exhibiting people-like behavior.
Yeah, and she's like, what happens if he goes outside? It's unsafe for him. And it's like, well, is it though? I feel like that is an excuse that you're telling yourself. And also like when Bob befriends strangers, like he befriends like a bunch of frat boys, and she's like, these are like, what do you mean these are your friends? They're not real. It's like, just because you can't make friends and meaningful connections doesn't mean that, he can't. And that just reminded me of a lot of like toxic parental-child relationships where parents think that they can control their child and control the relationships that they will be in the future. And it's like, can't do that.
Yeah. I guess with that, I kind of wish there was more of a connection between her own relationship with her mother, right? Like, and how much of her relationship to Bob is passed down from her own generational trauma. obviously she doesn't feel control. Like she doesn't feel control over her life. This is the reason why she does all these like really shitty things to the people that she ostensibly loves, right? The reason why she ghosts Luke in the middle of events, the reason why she, you know, doesn't return texts and doesn't, you know, she wants to feel in control, right? She wants confirmation, right? And she's not patient enough, or she's not trusting enough to like just like, you know, wait for it. She needs to like confirm. She needs to know now. And in some ways, she's trying to confirm that it's not there, right? Like she knows she's being a butt, and she knows doing this will push them away. And so she just wants to know and get it over with. But then when it does happen, you know, when Luke does break up with her at the Denny's, like she also can't handle that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it all goes back to her parents. It always goes back to the parents. It's always going to be like the parents' fault. Joking, but not joking. Because her parents are fixers. They've really, like, it's rare to see such supportive parents who are like, oh, you failed? Well, like, we can find a way to help you find the next step and figure out, like, okay, how do we help you get over this breakup? How do we, it's like, you missed an assignment? Okay, how can we, like, get your teacher to give you an extension or whatever? They're constantly fixing, and I'm like, you know, if she's self-sabotaging and she's so messy, and I think in the back of her brain she's like, oh, but someone else will clean it up for me. And it's such like a immature mindset.
Yeah.
And she also has like she talks about like all the weird pets that she's had in her life, and she wasn't able to take care of any of those pets. Like she wasn't able to take care of her snake. It was like, you know, they released it into the wild, and I'm like, is that allowed? I don't think that's allowed.
It's a crime. Yeah.
Yeah. And it just like goes to show, like, I think her parents knew that she was having a really hard time, like, coming into herself and thinking about other people and forming connections. And they're like, maybe she'll form a connection with a pet, but she fails in doing so. So you kind of see how, like, her taking care of the blob is like, it's another exotic pet that she is really struggling to take care of.
Yeah, she does not do a good job, right? She does, like he just, if the blob was an actual kid, like someone will be calling CPS on her for sure. And you know, it is interesting because we're so used to seeing parents that are more like Elliot's parents in like Asian American coming of age types of stories. And you know, this is just to show
but
that
they're
even
also so supportive, though. They're like so warm and affectionate,
but
and
also
I'm like, that's not usually what we see.
controlling, and also like, you know, like supportive as long as you fit their mold of a golden child, right? And you know, I think it's just interesting to see, like, because Vi's parents are the types of parents that like a lot of us growing up Asian American wished our parents were, right? And even then, like, I think it's interesting that even with those types of parents, you can still get pretty messed up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, any last thoughts on Blob before we call it an episode?
Yeah. I mean, I said this before. The book was pitched in the vein of Bunny and the Convenience Store Women, and those two books have very strong voices and really sharp humor. So I kind of expected this book to be funnier, but I don't know if it was like meant to be intentional. Like, Vi thinks that she's funny with like her deadpan humor, but I'm like, you're not that cool. You're not funny at all.
She's cringe. Yeah. She's like,
so like the humor kind of fell flat for me. And then the same thing with like the structure. There's a lot of flashbacks, and sometimes it gets like a little bit disorienting because it's just like very, it's like too much. And the flashbacks are triggered because she's reminded of a moment with her ex, which then leads her to something else. And then that reminds her of her ex again. And that just seems to be like the format of the book. And I'm like, I'm kind of getting bored with it. And also like not in love with the prose. It seemed very much like I did this and then I did this. I ate this. I ate that. And it's like very didactic, almost like stage directions, which is why I'm like not surprised that this was a play, like a 10-minute play. And it just seems like a very stretched out short story, a 10-minute play. A lot of the criticism I have about like the characters' relationships feeling a little bit underbaked. Like I feel like you can get away with that in short form because you have such a limited time to just like get the characters, but you have to fill in so much when it comes to like novel writing. So I don't know, I just feel let down. I expected this book to be weird. I expected this book to be like super funny, and it was just not that book. And I don't know if it's just me as a person, like if this is like a reader problem and it's like maybe it was funny to other people, but that was just like my takeaway.
I mean, I feel like the humor in this book comes from just like the fucked up things that Vi does and says. And it's like she thinks she's being funny, but everyone, including readers, just thinks it's cringe, right? Like this book has a lot of moments where like the audience would be like, oh, like this is very uncomfortable because she is not, doing well. I think for me, at some point I just like went with it. Like the book is written, like you said, in a very like, it's not exactly stream of consciousness, but very like, here's what happened. And at some point I just kind of just went with it. I went with this journey of this character that like I felt bad for, but I didn't like. And, I think I think I chose to see it as like, this is a character that's very stuck in the past, right? She can't move forward because she is constantly reminded of all the things, all the reasons why she sucks and all the sucky things that she's done and is still doing to others and herself. And so in that way, I was like, okay, like I hope things get better for her. And, hopefully it's not explicitly stated, but like being able to let go of Bob, right? As he goes off with Rachel to LA to pursue their dream of acting. Her, accepting a relationship with Ivan, who like, if this was Vi in the beginning of the book, would like never entertain a relationship with like an Asian guy, right? I think there are signs that she's turning the corner. Again, nothing has proven to me that this will stick, but as a character who knows she sucks and wants to get better, I think, at the end, I do hope she does get better. But at the same time, like I still would not be your friend. Like I would like stay away from this woman.
I mean, maybe she can recover a friendship with Elliot. Who knows?
Yeah. He seems to have turned the corner too a little bit, but he has his own shit to deal with. Everyone has their own shit to deal with, I think, in this book. It's just, are you going to be the type of person who makes your problem everyone else's problem, right?
Yeah. Also, I want everybody to just move out of that town for like a year, and then come back. It's like the world is bigger than this Midwestern college town. You know? Like get out of your bubble.
If she had gone to college at like a, UC or even Chicago or like a bigger city, like I feel like this would be a story about her like Asian American awakening, right? That we see a lot, but because she's stuck in her bubble, she was not allowed to do so. So I think that's kind of my read on it is like as an older, like as a 41-year-old Asian American dude who like has worked across a lot of different communities, right? Sometimes, you just gotta see that like the world is bigger. In order to move forward.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you like live in a city and you lived in like the majority. You were never part of like the marginalized community. It's just like you should move out of your town, like for a short bit. Like experience life outside of the community that you were raised in. I think that's very important and vital for anybody's like personal growth.
Yeah, totally agree. I think my world view opened up significantly when I moved to the East Coast and experienced being a minority for once in my life. And, I think it's easy to just have a dim view on her, but she doesn't know any better. So,
She's 22. She has like so much time to be a better person. Like there's a little bit of hope there.
Yeah.
But I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. So if you guys have just finished the book, like join our conversation on Discord. Like what did you guys think? Did you think that, Vi was a good person?
I think
did you like her?
Yeah. On Discord so far, everyone is, I think we're on the same page. Like, not sure how to feel about her. Don't like the things she does, but also feels bad for her because she doesn't know any better, right? So, definitely let us know your thoughts on either the book or on our discussion, anything we talked about. And if you're not on Discord, you can join it by joining our Patreon or by letting us know your thoughts on our Goodreads forums. We also take a look there as well. So, yeah, that'll do it for our discussion of Blob, a love story by Maggie Su, our May 2025 book club pick. Thank you so much for listening to our discussion. I guess before we go, Rira, can you tell our listeners what book we are reading for June 2025?
Yeah, so for June, it's my turn to pick, and I chose After Parties by Anthony Viesna So. And this is a short story collection about Cambodian American life. And it also offers offers insight into the intimacy of queer and immigrant communities. So perfect for Pride Month as well.
Yeah, looking forward to discussing this book with you at the end of June. And for our Patreon supporters, keep an eye on the Discord where I will be posting this month's reading schedule by the end of the weekend. And yeah, that'll do it for this episode of Books and Boba. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Books and Boba. This podcast was hosted by Marvin Yue and Rira Yu and edited and produced by Marvin Yue. Follow the book club on Twitter and Instagram by going to @BooksandBoba and engage with us on Goodreads on our Goodreads group. You can also check out past episodes of the podcast by going to booksandboba.com and by subscribing to us on your favorite podcast app. Don't forget, you can support Books and Boba and Asian American authors by purchasing books at our bookshop.org account. Check out the link in our show notes and also at booksandboba.com. Books and Boba is a proud member of the Potluck Podcast Collective, a collective of Asian American hosted podcasts featuring unique voices and stories from the Asian diaspora. Learn more about the collective and check out our fellow Potluck shows by visiting the website podcastpotluck.com. Thanks for listening.
Hey sports fans, welcome to Asians in Hockey. You may not realize it, but there's a rich history of Asians and AAPI folks who have contributed to the legacy of the greatest game on ice. From classic legends like Julie Chu and Robin Bawa to current greats like Leah Lum and Nick Suzuki, and even rising stars like Akane Shiga and Jason Robertson. We'll cover their stories, celebrate their accomplishments, and learn about their impact on the sport of hockey. I'm Nate Nakau, former beer league player, occasional youth hockey coach, and longtime hockey fan, and I'll be your host as we take a look at the rise of Asians in hockey. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Potluck Podcast Collective.